Mr. Owens, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Ms. Shearholtz, I just have a quick question for you. Have you ever run a business?
Right now, I'm the president of an organization that has around 50 FTEs.
No, I'm not talking corporation, a business. Have you ever taken a risk, invested, had shareholders you have to kind of deal with or look at your profit?
I have not, but as I said,
Okay.
I now run an
Thank
organization
you.
with
Thank
50
you.
FTEs.
Well, we're talking about business ownership here, and I'll just say this, because we do have people on the desk here that's experts in what they do for decades. A little bit of my history, and by the way, there's nothing wrong with government and business owner. Either one is okay. I think it's important to understand there's a need for both. I came into NFL after 10 years and started a business, and 9 years failed totally, big time. Went to being a security guard in a chimney sweep. I never ever thought about being a government worker. I did get back in the corporate environment and always had a business on the side as an independent contractor. The reason why, because I wanted a choice. I wanted to have control. I wanted to have that I can dream past another person's job. Do you think that being in your position, it would be healthy to listen to other business owners, what they think? Since, Ms. Spears, how long have you been in your profession?
I've been in this role 7 years, and 2 years prior running our congressional office.
Okay.
So nearly 10 years.
Okay. Franchise?
Yeah, I've been in the franchise world for 17 years in corporate America, running businesses for 30 years before that.
Okay. Heritage and your, Mr. Moore, how long have you been doing what you're doing?
I've run 3 nonprofits, so I have not run a private, private for-profit business.
Okay.
But I take your point. I mean, this is, one of the problems with the Biden administration. We did this famous study that came out 6 months ago that of the 75 top economic, financial, transportation, energy officials in the Biden administration, the average number of years of business experience, median number is 0.
Okay. I think I need to make a point. First of all, I want to shout out to every business owner out there that's taking the risk. For many people who don't understand our free market, our great society, our great country, our freedom is built on our middle class. Our middle classes are those folks who have empathy, they have a vision, they want a good name, and they look back and try to invest back in their community. That middle class is powered by business owners. The business owners and the middle class is what pays your salary, because it's the excess, it's the profit. I think when you talk about things like PRO Act, why don't you talk to the experts? I'm trying to understand how government workers get to this point where, because you're good at one area, you're experts at everything else. We're telling you that this country is built on business ownership, on taking risk. I've been a risk taker, and again, personalities, we have different personalities. Some are more risk averse. I happen to be one of those guys who like risk, because I think to get my dream, I'll have to take some more. So it's okay to not want to be a risk taker, but don't take away the dreams and hopes and choices for those who do. This country has always been built on business ownership, and we need to make sure we understand that the threat to our nation today is this mentality that we have this central force that knows everything and can dictate every single step in our lives in terms of what we do and what we don't do, what choice we have, what choice we don't, and we cannot afford to do that. I wanted to ask a real quick question, Ms. Akers. You state in your testimony there's over 790,000 franchise establishments employ 8.4 million workers. I want you to keep in mind, it's not government who hires these people. These are business owners. There are a lot of business and workers who serve millions of customers and help drive our economy. We need to ensure businesses like yours can expand, hire, and serve customers. As a franchisee, what specific regulations or policies do you believe are hindering your ability to address workforce challenges?
Well, the number one right now is the fear of the PRO Act going through, because we certainly won't be able to do anything with that. We give better benefits and pay to our staff than anybody else could regulate, and we will lose that impact if we do this, because it'll be a one-size-fits-all thing. And I thank you for what you're doing, Mr. Owens.
I'll say this. I'm so thankful that American people have given us an opportunity to stand for who they are. The Republican Conference stands for faith, family, the free market, and education. It's for risk takers. And I can promise you we'll do everything we can to make sure we do not allow this PRO Act, this anti-American, anti-free market PRO Act to go through. And we'll make sure we educate the American people. Let them know if you dream, go for it. If you want to work for government, go for it. But do not stop those who power the middle class. And with that, I'll yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Owens. Ms. Leisure Fernandez, you're recognized. Mr. Owens, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Secretary, for being here. I'm going to go back a little bit. My dad received his PhD in 1951 in soil science, agronomy. I received my biology and chemistry degree in '75 and in biology. I know you graduated in 2001. One of the things that we shared in common, my dad and I, even though there's a 24-year difference, is something called organic chemistry. And organic chemistry is a study of organic compounds, property reactions, and predictability. In other words, it's order. Even though you graduated in a different study altogether, wouldn't you agree that changes in organic chemistry can't change because we wish it to be so?
I would want to engage in further conversation.
Well, no, this is a very simple question. Can we change the properties and reactions of organic chemistry because we believe that we wish it so? Yes or no? I mean, it's just based on your basic common sense. What do you think?
I don't have enough information
okay, well,
about organic chemistry
I'll say this as a scientist.
Answer. As
a scientist, I'll say no. You cannot change organic chemistry. If we did, we would not have a pharmaceutical industry alive today. Okay. There's another law of gravity. And I know that the Biden administration believes in executive orders, but let me just ask you this, based on equity, is it possible to change the law of gravity so blacks no longer are impacted by it? The answer is no.
I'm not sure,
okay,
sir.
No, let me just say that my point is this. The law of gravity is one of God's laws. It's not going to change because we wish it so.
Right.
It's based on predictability. Now, I was a top athlete in high school. I went to the University of Miami, All-American, played in the NFL, All-Pro. And it was based on the fact, as a man, there's certain things we can predict about me, my chromosomes, DNA, hormones, muscle mass, bone mass. Would you say it would be fair for me, anytime in this process, from high school until 30 years old, that I had a chance to box or wrestle with your daughter, competing with your daughter?
Thank you, Congressman. I think I understand now the line of questioning that you're getting to. Let me just be very clear here.
Well, now the question, I want to make sure I have just a few minutes here. The question is, would that be fair for me with what I just described as a man, because I decided I want to change myself to being a woman, that I can now compete against your daughter?
Yeah, it's my responsibility and my privilege to make sure that all students have access.
Let me just say this. I'm sorry. Please just bear with me. Would you say, as an 18-year-old young man, that if me and some of my homeboys decided we wanted to be women, would it be okay for me to go into your daughter's bathroom to expose myself because I felt I was a woman? Would that be fair to your daughter?
Congressman,
And by the way, I have 5 daughters, so I am very passionate about the questions I ask you right now, and I would think there would be no question in your mind as a father what these answers should be. There should not be hemming and hawing about this.
Congressman,
I'm telling your daughter now.
There's nothing in our proposed Title IX regulations that determine how bathrooms should be used.
Okay, all right. Let's move on. There's something here I want to share with everybody.
Sure.
It's called the cloud pivot strategy. Something put in place back in 1966, and I hope Americans really pay attention to this. It was 2 Marxists from Columbia. Their goal was very simply to propose and by the way, this time when the Democrats owned the House, Senate, and administration, propose to create a crisis in the current welfare system that would ultimately bring about its collapse and replace it with a system of guaranteed annual income, which is Marxism. They hope to accomplish this by informing the poor black Americans of their rights to welfare and assistance, encourage them to apply for benefits, in effect overloading the already overburdened local and national bureaucracy. Would you agree to use misery as a political strategy is the essence of evil?
Congressman, I'll be very pleased to share how our budget is going to help our students.
Right now I'm talking about using misery to get an agenda across. Is that evil?
Sir,
let me just say this. It is. By the way, the results of this, this is winning to the race, created this effort of Cloven Piven, created generations of black people for whom working for a living is an abstraction. I came through a community in which we led the country in the growth of the middle class, men matriculated from college, men committed to marriage. This is what did us in. Political, progressive policies that hurt our kids. I want to place the record. 23 schools in Baltimore have zero proficiency in math. And I would bet you, if your child was in these schools here, you wouldn't sit around and say it's okay to leave them there. You'd do whatever you had to do, regardless of your income. You would take 2 or 3, 4 jobs. Poor people have the same love for their kids as elitists. So I want to say that I want to end this to the record. American people waking up. American people waking up. We're going to get this done. And I yield back my time.
Thank you.
On higher education and workforce development will come to order. I note there's a quorum is present. Without objection, the chair is authorized to call a recess at any time. The subcommittee is meeting today to exercise its oversight over the Biden administration's illegal student loan debt transfer scheme. Welcome. This is the second hearing in a 2-part series examining the implications of Biden's student loan policies for students and taxpayers. We titled the series Breaking the System because that's exactly what the Biden administration is attempting to do. This, Mr. Cardray and Mr. Corwell, the Department of Education has vastly overstepped its authority. You're operating under a complete executive fiat. Upon my reading of the Constitution, nowhere in the Congress legislative powers delegated to federal agencies like the Office of Federal Student Aid. The first section of the first article of our Constitution is unequivocal. All legislative powers herein lie granted shall be invested to the Congress of the United States, which shall consist of a Senate and the House of Representatives. Yet under the guise of the 2003 law meant to alleviate administrative hardships in dealing with federal loans, student loans for our men and women in uniform, the department has proposed and implemented sweeping changes to the entire student loan system. Congress has in no way authorized the department's action of the last 2 years, nor significantly legislated in the area over the last decade. Let me quickly run through the department's abuses. To start, your department extended the student loan repayment moratorium 6 times. Each time, it neglected to provide proper guidance for servicers and borrowers regarding the returning of payment. Rather, educational bureaucrats opted to wait until the 11th hour to announce the moratorium extensions, leaving borrowers scrambling in the dark. Last week, Chairwoman Fox asked Secretary Cardona whether you have received or spoken directly with the loan servicers about returning to the repayment. Instead of directly answering the questions, Secretary unfortunately obfuscated. We're therefore looking forward to hearing more about those communications today. Next, the department announced blanket student loan cancellations. This plan amounts to a legal wait-and-see strategy in which President Biden knowingly proposed a dubious plan and rule to push the limits of our constitutional order. The next and possible final blow to our broken system is the legal end-around devised by the department, otherwise known as the income-driven repayment. If the blanket cancellation sham cannot pass Supreme Court muster, the IDR and other backdoor cancellation schemes like borrower defense to repayment will effectively achieve the same goal. Let me put this in perspective. President Biden has signed 3 bills this year, just 3. One to end the pandemic, one to reform DC's criminal code, and one to declassify intelligence related to the COVID-19's origins. Meanwhile, the Department of Education has submitted billions of dollars of regulations completely reshaping the post-secondary education. When in the world did unelected bureaucrats at the Department of Education and so-called nonpartisan leaders of the federal student aid become legislators? The department's actions are not a fix. Instead, they only exacerbate the long-term structural problems of college costs. Indeed, in 1987, the then Secretary of Education, William Bennett, foreshadowed the mounting problem, saying, if anything, increases in financial aid in recent years has enabled colleges and universities to blithely raise their tuitions, confident that the federal loan subsidies would help cushion the increase. Study after study has shown, unfortunately, that Mr. Bennett was spot on in his assessment. In fact, the Congressional Budget Office recently estimated that the administration's IDR plan will lead to a 12% increase in student borrowing, largely due to increase in tuition. It is a taxpayer who will ultimately foot the bill for this reckless proposal. Taken together, the Biden student loan scam would cost taxpayers up to $1 trillion when it's all said and done. Simply put, America cannot afford it. America is broke at the tune of $32 trillion. Every borrowed dollar is inflationary, and according to the Committee for the Responsible Federal Budget, the administration's blanket cancellation plan would increase inflationary pressures by 15 to 27 basic points. Americans will not soon forget this inflationary havoc already wreaked and wrought by this administration. All in all, we need to put a stop to the Biden's radical, costly, and unlawful student loan scheme. These starts with fixing a broken and unaccountable executive branch, and for that reason, I'm glad we're having this hearing today and conducting the robust oversight. As always, sunshine is the best disinfectant. With that, I look forward to a productive. Thank you, my friend from Louisiana. I rise today in full support of House Republicans' formal impeachment inquiry into President Joe Biden. 7 months ago, House Republicans returned oversight to the People's House. We worked consistently day after day to make your government more accountable, as promised in our commitment to America. Since January, concerning and credible allegations against President Joe Biden have emerged, including abuse of power, obstruction of justice, corrupt foreign business dealings, influence peddling schemes that led to tens of millions of dollars in the pockets of several members of the Biden family. So far, $20 million in profits to a family has nothing to do with our government at this point. I think we can all agree Americans deserve accountability from our president. Our impeachment inquiry is not a political ploy. It's an opportunity for Congress to continue its duty, digging into the potential of corruption and bringing facts to light. The evidence is very troubling. Eyewitnesses have testified to President Biden's involvement in phone calls, interactions, and dinners that resulted in significant financial gains for his son and his son's business partners. The Treasury Department alone has flagged more than 150 transactions involving the Biden family and other business associates as suspicious activity by U.S. banks. Even a trusted FBI informant has alleged a bribe to the Biden family. There's evidence that President Biden used his official office to coordinate with Hunter Biden's business partners regarding Hunter's role with Burisma, a Ukrainian energy company. These actions and more raise serious questions about the integrity of our highest office. Our government serves the interests of all Americans, not just a selected few. Rest assured, House Republicans will follow the evidence wherever it leads, and the truth will come to light. Thank you, my good friend from Louisiana, Representative Johnson, and for bringing this team together tonight. I yield back.
Thank you, my friends. Well said. Mr. Speaker, I yield next the gentleman from Idaho, Mr. Fulcher, for so much time as he may consume.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman, and your guests and witnesses. Some say that we are here today to talk about so-called book burning in K through 12 school libraries. One of our nation's most consequential books banning was done by the Supreme Court in 1963 when it officially mandated Bible reading. This book is banned from all of us. Anything that deals with federal that's no longer can see it, can no longer read it. Matter of fact, there's some that are listening today probably think this is totally unconstitutional. I can even hold it up. Due to the banning of this book, generations of Americans today have no knowledge of the tenets upon which this country has been founded. Tenets based on the belief that with God in time, we can truly become a more perfect union. That ban the knowledge of basic truths of happiness, like the Judeo-Christian concepts of the Golden Rule, which says we should treat others the way we want to be treated. Or ban the knowledge of the 10 Commandments. Among these, thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not commit adultery, thou shalt honor thy father and thy mother. We instead find the greatest disdain for these laws wherever Democrats rule. We find the banning of parents for school board meetings. We find where Democrats rule, we find the banning of parents from knowledge of the mental state of their children. Wherever Democrats rule, we find the banning of knowledge of what other adults, strangers, are doing to sexualize our kids. Here's a sample of the books that Democrats, the National Library Association, demand that we do not ban. Genderqueer, features pictures of oral sex performed on sex toys. This book is gay, provides a how-to guide for strangers for sex on gay sex apps. Out of the Darkness contains rape. Lucky contains rape. All Boys Aren't Blue contains underage incest. Lawn Boy contains a passage of 10-year-old boys performing oral sex on each other. These books are available to school-age children, and there's no shame from those who say this is not right. I am very proud of the engagement of the parents who now recognize the rot and the filth that's being pushed in our innocence to our vulnerable children. There's a reason why the two words, too young, are never spoken by those who have no respect for parents, their children, or the family unit defined by God to raise and protect them. Last year, Utah passed HB 374, a bill that prohibits child access to pornography in our school systems, because in Utah, we get it right. We care more about our kids and an ideology. Bills have been passed to protect children from internet pornography in schools, but students need the same protection from books. Our Republican majority this year passed H.R. 5, the Parents' Bill of Rights, that protects students and assures parents of their rights to know what books are in school libraries. Not one of my Democratic friends voted yes. Not one. Moving forward, our Republican majority will work to stop the entrapment of children in institutions who prioritize sexual indoctrination instead of reading, writing, thinking, and succeeding. Every child, regardless of city, state, zip code, should have the right for educational freedom. As we release the power of the free market and meritocracy, parents will have the civil rights to access a quality education for their child. Ms. Smith, one of the things you mentioned, that library books don't stay in the library on the shelves, that they can be used directly for school curriculum. Is this correct? And what is the implication of how this might be used for inappropriate content?
Yes, sir. Actually, my second grader last year read one of these books off the shelf, and he was very uncomfortable and actually had to leave the library and asked to go to the bathroom because he was uncomfortable. I don't think we should ever put a 7-year-old in that predicament. I think that we need to start thinking about that these books shouldn't be available to these kids in the first place. And for a 7-year-old to be bold enough to actually walk out, that we shouldn't even put our kid in that situation in the first place.
Thank you. Mr. Eden, we've talked a lot about book removal. What do you know, what I'd like to know is how do these books get into schools' libraries in the first place?
Yeah. They get in large part innocently enough on the behalf of school librarians who look at a list and see that certain titles are recommended as being LGBT inclusive, and so they purchase the books. They're looking at lists from organizations such as the American Library Association, which at this point is a wholly ideological organization run by a self-proclaimed Marxist who has said that school libraries need to be sites of socialist organizing. So there's an agenda in terms of what's presented to school librarians. School librarians take that agenda, possibly innocently at first, and then are surprised and defensive when they find that they're being objected to, and that's kind of how we're here today.
Thank you. I'm running out of time. I'll just say, Dr. Friedman, you've made the strongest case I can think of why we need to have educational choice freedom. Because there are people like yourself who will look at facts and studies and try to convince all of us that parents don't know better what's for their own children. This is a fundamental concept in our country. Parents have the rights to make sure their kids are educated, not the way other people want, particularly when it comes to sexual content, but the way we want. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. O.
Rabbi Howard, in your testimony, you made a striking statement. You said that Jewish students need a fortress now rather than a home. Can you tell me more what this looks like? In other words, are the mentors that are Orthodox Union and other organizations place, have they have the protection that they need for the Jewish students? And has that changed in recent years, especially since the Hamas attack?
Thank you for the question. It has changed. It has changed dramatically. It's changed over the years, yes, as you will hear from all of us. October 6th, we were also dealing with an intensely fearful and changed campus environment, and it has multiplied exponentially since October 7th. Yes, our professionals, our educators, are spending, as I said in the original testimony as well, they're spending a lot of time a lot of time counseling students about this, about environment, about how to respond, how to report, how to navigate what has become an increasingly unfriendly environment. Our Jewish students on campus, when they come to the place, they're very often they're doing something which is really essential to themselves and to their identity. They can't and they shouldn't need to melt into a campus environment by hiding who they are. The ability to convene in Jewish spaces. But Jewish spaces are targeted. People are seeking extra security. One of the things that we're working together as Jewish organizations is to bring greater physical security to Jewish spaces on campus and surrounding the Jewish students. And that's the story of the fortress. Our leaders are struggling to make their voices heard in university administrations in order to be able to bring out the proper reaction. All such administrations should be having serious discussions about how they restore a sense of safety and freedom to Jewish students. Many of our educators are trying to be on the front lines of doing that. Sometimes they are welcomed, sometimes their voices are welcomed, sometimes the process begins. Too frequently, they're struggling to be able to do it. And I could just tell you, if I may, myself, I am by career, before I assumed this position, which is for a national organization of congregations, I was a congregational rabbi. I'm a teacher. I went into this business in order to be able to work with people to build Jewish identity. I did not get into the business in order to be able to argue about the rights of Jews to exist.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Ms. Tartak, you noted that the so-called diversity, equity, and inclusion officers should be questioned for protecting every minority group. I personally think that the diversity, equity, and inclusion is a fraud. And what we're seeing now in our campuses across the country is proof of that. What is the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Office at Yale doing to protect you and your other Jewish students on campus? And from what you've heard, other peers and other campuses?
So Yale Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion offices and organizations alike have done nothing for me and my friends, and the horrifying experiences that I detailed in my testimony. Surveys of DEI organizations on college campuses have found that only 2 in 24 even address anti-Semitism, and if and when they refuse to step in for Jews, I know what comes next. Okay, thank you. In a few seconds we have left, Mr. Marcus. You've heard the voices of the left express concerns about the pro-Hamas students not being given their free right of speech. Yet in your testimony, you noted that Brandeis Center, over half the Jewish fraternities and sorority students surveyed expressed avoiding their views on Israel because of the concerns they might have for themselves. Do you have any comments on that? Any further comments on that?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Certainly, I would say that we speak every day with students who feel that they are unable to express their Jewish identity on campus without various forms of punishment or social stigmatization. Jewish students for whom Zionism is an integral part of their identity are in particular unable to do so. They are finding that they are excluded from student government positions or subjected to impeachment votes or otherwise excluded. Thank you so much.
I now recognize, thank you. Let me just start off by saying, being raised in the 60s, days of segregation, this is truly deja vu. One thing that I did learn through my growth of the years is that hate is not passed down in our genes. It's taught or untaught. What we're seeing here is hate being perpetuated. We keep people segregated, keep them from building bridges of trust, never allowing them to find commonality. Teach them that everything that's gone wrong in their life is because of somebody else's actions. Then teach them to look at our differences, our color, creed, and culture, and then teach them to judge each other. It's dehumanizing, it robs people of individuality, but the end game, if it is hate, it is very effective. We teach one race, all minorities, that they are oppressed. Do DEI, we then teach another race, whites and Jews, that they are oppressors. The result is hatred, segregation, the inability for our children to see evil when it's present. One of my Democratic colleagues was asked recently about the use of strategy by Hamas to rape Jewish women and children, girls and women, as terror. Her response was not to defend these women against these evil men, but that she wanted to discuss hierarchical oppression. That is DEI. It is a failure to protect Jewish communities across our country at your universities. And let me just say this also. October 7th was a very different day in our lifetime. And yet, every single time we're talking about anti-Semitism, we some kind of way drift off into every other sense of racism. We're talking about 1,200 lives, babies being burned, beheaded, hostages, and yet we cannot stay focused on anti-Semitism. I just remember a couple of years ago when we were dealing with Black Lives Matter, try to talk about Blue Lives Matter, Jew Lives Matter, Arab Lives Matter, and you'd be called a racist. It's time for us to focus on what's happening on your campuses. And it might sound flowery, all the ideas of what your values might be, but those values are not being translated to our kids. You're seeing them in the streets every single day. MIT, we heard from a university student here that DEI official liked on the most posts on their media, a post calling President Biden a liar for saying that Hamas beheaded babies. She also posted a saying that Israel doesn't have the right to exist, is illegitimate settler colony like the United States. I have a question regarding this idea of segregation, Dr. Gay. Harvard is now have graduations for Black-only graduates, Hispanic-only graduates, and gay-only graduates. How does that bring us together as opposed to dividing us based on color, creed, and all the other things? And by the way, is it okay for a white group to say we don't want other minorities to be part of our graduation?
Thank you for the question. There are few scenes that are more inspiring than being.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm going to ask you in a way that's going to be very quick because I have a little time. Is it okay to segregate people based on their color? Yes or no?
I oppose segregation.
Okay. Well, I do too, but it's happening on your campus. Okay. Dr. Kornbluth, I'm sorry. We have on your campus something called Chocolate City, where Black-only dorms, where whites are excluded. Is it okay also for whites to set up a white-only dorm where minorities are excluded?
You know, actually at MIT, our students affiliate voluntarily with whichever dorm they want to. It's not exclusionary, it's actually positive selection by students which dormitory they want to live in.
Okay, so it's okay for blacks to not make whites feel included. Is it okay for whites not to let blacks feel included on your campus? We're talking about segregation, and it's obviously happening on your campuses.
You know, I think it's really important to say that there's a distinction between sending an exclusionary message and looking to other students for common experiences and support. Okay, let me just, I'm sorry, I'm running out of time. And what you're saying is very simply, in 1960s, it would have been okay for whites and blacks to segregate themselves because they felt more like the people they're with. I disagree very, very much. But let me just say this. If in case we discover, and this is for everybody here real quick in the last few minutes, that there's a direct link from DEI and CRT to the growth of Marxist-centrist groups like BLM, Antifa, and the pro-Hamas on campuses, would you then end the DEI initiatives on your campus? If there's a link between what that is and what the result of hatred, would that be would that be finished on your campus real quickly? We have just yes or no. Dr. Gay, let's start with you. Yes or no?
Our DEI efforts are about ensuring that all of our
so that's a no. Okay, Doctor, I'm sorry, Ms. Miguel. Yes or no? If it's found to be a link between Marxist, BLM, Antifa, and hate groups. Yes or no?
Our DEI office is committed to having everyone
thrive.
No.
All right, and Ms. Cornbluth, real quick, just yes or no, sorry.
I find it hard to understand how equity and inclusion as a concept
That's a no.
is a
Okay.
hatred inducer.
Thank you so much. I think that says a lot. Thank you, Ron. Appreciate it.
You can give an answer in writing, and I have to remind members not to engage in personalities.